Hello everyone, welcome to another exciting broadcast. You can have a look from behind now and you can see what it looks like. The whole studio. I will go live in just over 2 minutes. You can see there's a countdown clock there. So we're going live on Facebook, YouTube and Periscope. Today we're going to have something very exciting. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Christian Sasse. I'm SassePhoto. And I do this every Friday. It's all about education. There's my dog too. He wants to say hello too. You see, that is Juno, our lovely rescue dog. So say hi to everyone. As soon as he hears me speak, he gets very excited. He wants to be part of it. Yeah, Juno, you're also part of the show, of course. So I'm going to go silent for another 1.5 minutes and then I will see you. Hello everyone and welcome to another exciting show. I just see there's some friends of mine. Jack Molan is on again. It's wonderful, Jack, to see you. You're a special guest. Jack is the wonderful author of an exciting book about his adventures in the Bering Sea in Alaska. I've been with him already twice on the trip. Most exciting personality. So welcome, Jack, too. And all my friends, I see Osprey Mama, by the way. Hi, Osprey Mama. Thanks for the beautiful cup here. Oh, isn't that incredible? It almost looks like that. You have to see, this is from Florida, but for some reason it has the same color as the background, and that's why it looks a bit transparent. Anyway, hi to everyone and welcome also to my friends on YouTube, on Facebook, and also on Periscope, by the way. So it's wonderful. I did figure out all the technology. The issue is, as you can see from the back, you know, if you take a back view of the studio, you can see how incredibly complex everything is. There are a lot of monitors. There's a lot of software updates, and sometimes this causes problems. But I think it's all sorted out again and it's all fine. So hi to all my friends. You can see I'm looking here on the screen so I can see your name. I can see Osprey Mama, Terry Green, Bill Kitchen, hi. Joanne oh gosh, can't pronounce it, Huntingster. Sorry, Amanda Price. And I can also see here is my YouTube channel. So I also want to welcome all my friends on YouTube. Kit is also on YouTube at the moment. I can see that. Kind Keith. Max Alexander, Alice, hi Alice, nice to see you again, wonderful. Alice is on YouTube, that is great. Well, you know, everyone, and Facebook is on there too, so I have about 110,000 followers on Facebook, so I want to say thank you to everyone, and it's wonderful to do something different again today because I'm not interviewing anyone, I'm running this again all by myself, and I actually did something with Professor Bird to make it really interesting, and this was at the Vancouver convention. So let me just put this in the background so you can see that. Let me get myself there again. So here in the background you can see this. That is it's the IOC. It's not the International Olympic Committee. This is the International Ornithological. You'll get a prize when you can say ornithology. Ornithological conference, which was at the end of July. Okay, so this was at the end of July in Vancouver. And you know, this is so unique, so unique. The next one is going to be in Melbourne, in Australia. And we also have an Australian here. Hi, GoPro Creations. I can see my good friend there, GoPro Creations, who is also quite a technical geek. I can see Susan North and many, many others. Very nice to have you here. Someone from Australia I saw. Hey, I love Australia. So the next one is going to be in Melbourne in 4 years. Oh my goodness, do we have to wait a long time? But I can tell you, it'll be worth a trip to Melbourne. So let's get right to it now. Why is this so exciting? Well, we have 6 interviews today, and these interviews are absolutely incredible. They are from the leading experts in the world of birds. These are people who have grown up with birds all their life. They know so much about their subject. It is absolutely incredible. And I had the privilege. Hi, Lady Hawk, too. That is very nice to have you here. Sherry M, isn't it happy birthday for you? I think it's Sherry's birthday, if I see it correctly. A very nice Patreon supporter. I think this is your birthday. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it is. It is your birthday, so happy birthday to you. Very nice. So anyway, lovely to have you all here. And thank you also to my Patreon supporters, all of you who are so kind to support all of us and my team, of course. Okay, so what is so exciting about these interviews? Well, it is exactly 11 years ago when I came to Canada, right? Exactly 11 years ago when I came to Canada. And, you know, 11 years later, do I ever look back? No, I loved it. And I had the choice between any place I wanted in North America, and it was difficult because I also wanted to go to San Francisco. I love San Francisco, and so, but I finally chose Vancouver, and I never looked back. Thank you, GoPro Creations. Thank you very much for your kind donations. Great seeing you again. Your studio is super, isn't it? You know, it's so exciting. It's so exciting. So I never looked back, and Canada it is. Well, the first contribution is all about Canada. By the way, think about it. There's one bird, and this is going to be the question at the end. There's one bird that contains the national country in the word too. Which bird is that? It is quite well known. That's going to be my one question at the end where you can win something. Think about it. It is something that is very well known also in North America. So what type of bird also has the word of, I'm not even going to say what, but has the national, the country here in it. Okay, I'll make it a little bit complicated so it doesn't get too easy. But let's get now to the national bird of Canada. What is the national bird of Canada? What is the national bird of the United States? Well, that is an easy one. Is it the turkey? Well, there was a long debate about the turkey, wasn't it? I guess that's the Thanksgiving answer. But anyway, so what is the national bird of Canada? Well, you won't believe it, the Canadians cannot make up their minds, but they did have a competition, and one bird came right to the top, and they're trying to change the name. It's the gray jay. It's the gray jay, also known as the Canada jay. And it's all going to be about that. So let's jump right into the convention. And the first interview is going to be with, and let me just get the names right, just give me a second. The first interview is going to be with Dan Strickland and Ryan Norris. Dan Strickland and Dr. Ryan Norris, and they are going to tell you a little bit about the history of the Canada jay. And then we're going to talk about crows. We're going to talk about peregrines in Rome. Can you believe it? We're going to go then to Israel, and we can see how birds help in the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. It's quite amazing. Then we go to my beloved South Africa, where I also grew up, where we're going to hear something quite interesting about the incredible bird life in South Africa. And finally, we're going to go to England, and we're going to talk to another interesting professor all about bird migration. So hold your breath. It's going to be really exciting. So let's go to it. Let's get to it. By the way, in the background, that here is the convention. So let's jump right into it now. I'll go on silent. We're running. It's fine.
Hi, I'm David Bird. I'm here at the International Ornithological Congress 2018, downtown Vancouver at the Vancouver Convention Center. And I'm here speaking to of Canada's top experts on the Canada jay. And I'm going to start with talking with Dan Strickland over here. Dan, how did you get involved with Canada jays from the get-go?
Well, it goes way back to the 1960s when I worked in Algonquin Park, and I met the true father of Canada jay studies, long since deceased man named Russ Rutter. He was a old-time park naturalist in Algonquin Park, and he was the first person to put colored bands on Canada jays to permit individual recognition, and it started to reveal a fascinating world that I've been continuing to pursue ever since then, more than 50 years now.
And Ryan, how did you get involved? Would you consider yourself a protege of Dan's in some respects?
I don't know.
I know you studied many other very interesting things out of the University of Guelph, but
well, I decided to call Dan up one day, and I saw I saw some of his work published, and I said, "Hey Dan, do you want to work together?" And
that's how that happened.
And Dan said, "Yeah, that'd be great." And I came up, and I remember that the first time I came up, and we with Dan in the winter, because gray jays start breeding in late February.
Right.
I came up to Algonquin Park, and we went out. We found a nest, and I said, "That's magic." And yeah. I said, "That's magic," and we were.
He said the right thing.
Yeah.
We were in the middle of a spruce forest and covered in snow, and there was a gray jay
So
female sitting on a nest.
Fell in love with this bird at that time.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think Dan. You could argue that Dan is the father of gray jay research. Russ Rutter started studying and marking gray jays in Algonquin Park, but it wasn't until Dan took the study over that it really started expanding, and Dan started following a good number of nests and getting a really good idea of the factors that influence success of gray jays.
Right, and you with your mind, because you do lots of neat things with other kinds of organisms, including monarch butterflies, probably saw lots of possibilities for research questions to be answered with what we'll be calling from now on the Canada jay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. I've been calling them gray jays. Well, yeah. Studying Canada jays was actually a big departure for me, because I've studied up until that point. I really studied things that moved thousands or tens of thousands of kilometers. So, being in a spot year round or studying something that is in the same place year round was a big departure for me. But really, I'm interested in the factors that influence abundance, long-term abundance. So that's what really attracted me to the study.
And you have several graduate students working on this now. Yeah,
well, Dan and I have had several graduate students working over the years now. I started working with Dan in 2009, and since then we've had a couple master's students and we have a couple PhD students working on it. So it's been great.
And Dan, you're doing a lot of your work on Vancouver Island, Mount Washington.
Yes, the presence of Ryan's graduate students in Algonquin Park has allowed me to do an exploratory, and now a little more than exploratory, study of the very different race of jays that lives out here on Vancouver Island and on the west coast of North America.
What's different about them? What have you found?
Well, they look different. They're a little bit smaller, and they have other plumage features which enable you to quickly distinguish them. But what is of greatest interest to me is that their social organization is entirely different from the one we see in the boreal forest and in eastern North America as in Algonquin Park. So I was just totally intrigued by that, and still am. It's turning out to be a very, very different social system, and they were once considered to be a different species, and another project that we're involved in seeks to see genetically just how different they are and how much interbreeding there is between these two forms, and it's quite possible that, well, who knows, they may be re-elevated to the status of separate species. That is, these western birds.
Now, we've been interchanging the name gray jay and Canada jay back and forth here, and I can understand it for you two guys because you've published several papers on so-called gray jays and so on, but very recently, this past summer, roughly May through July, when it was official in July, the North American Classification Committee changed the name back to Canada Jay from what it was before. Dan, could you maybe tell us a little bit about your role in making that happen?
Yeah, well, we both sort of grew up calling them gray jays because the classification committee decided that they should be called that, gray jay, in 1957. But it turns out that the name Canada Jay was definitely the original name, and it turns out that it goes way back to 1772. Wow. So when the name was changed in 1957, it had been Canada Jay for 185 years. Wow. So this isn't something that we just dreamt up at the last moment. It's the restoration of the original name. And I won't go into all the details, but the records show that it was a sort of a misunderstanding or an originally justified name change to Gray Jay. The reasons for it evaporated by the time they actually published it in 1957, so it never should have been changed in the first place. And it was Canada Jay for almost 200 years, and we're glad it's back.
But so the really interesting thing to make this happen was that Dan went several times back into the archives of old meetings from the American Ornithologist Union to find out what was happening or what was the reason for that, and then found out that they had no good reason, and then presented his research to the nomenclature committee, the official nomenclature committee, and they read the document, which a bunch of us signed, and said, good. Yeah, you did a great job, and we believe you, and your reasoning's sound, and so we'll change the name back.
It was a very unusual thing for that to happen too, because they don't normally do that sort of thing, and it wasn't done for any kind of political reasons at all. It was strictly done because you just presented such eloquent arguments as to why they sort of made a mistake in '57, and it's been rectified.
Yeah, and good on them. They fessed up.
Yeah, that's good. Just to wrap up here, Ryan, could you tell us a little bit about the potential impact of climate change on this species?
Yeah, and that was kind of my initial motivation, one of my major ones for getting involved with Dan in Algonquin Park on the long-term study. First of all, long-term studies like this are rare.
Yes.
I mean, you don't find very many of them.
Right.
Their value comes in just exactly what we're doing now, is looking at how individuals and a population can respond or potentially responds to long-term changes in climate.
Yep.
You don't have very many of those cases anywhere in the world.
Yes.
And with the gray jay, what we're with the Canada jay, what we're particularly interested in is because they rely on stored food over the winter, they store that food in the late summer and fall.
Okay.
And one of our hypotheses about why they might be declining in Algonquin Park, which they have been declining over the last few decades, is that warmer temperatures during the fall might be spoiling that food, effectively ruining the refrigerator that they use to store that food over the winter and to survive, and not only to survive, but to initiate breeding and to breed throughout the late winter, which they do. They're one of the unique birds that actually do that.
Well, we can only hope that the birds somehow adapt to climate change in some way, but and don't become an endangered species for Canada. Thank you very much, Ryan, for doing this, and you too, Dan. It's an honor to speak to both of you, and I wish you the best of success with your future studies.
Our pleasure.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, wasn't that interesting? So that was contribution number one, all about the Canada jay. And I've seen some comments there about the blue jay. I may have made a mistake there, by the way. The last bird that you saw is the gray jay. So I just have to check that. Maybe I did put in the wrong clip, so I apologize for that. But the gray jay that you did see, let's see if I can just blend that in again. Yeah, that is definitely the picture of the gray jay that you see below there. Okay, so that is the bird that they're talking about. So that's the bird that they nominate as the Canada jay. So my apologies if I put in a wrong clip, but I can see you're all very much awake, which is good. Wonderful. Okay. So the next contribution is really interesting because the next contribution goes to Kevin McGowan, and he is a crow expert. So now it's all about crows. By the way, this beautiful picture that I'm going to put in the background now is a picture that I photographed the wall, and this was all contributed from all over the world. People were putting their beautiful drawings, paintings, and so on a big wall. It is an enormously long wall. And this is just one section of the wall. I find it so beautiful that I've actually decided that I will take this as a background in future because it is just so magnificent, just shows the beautiful colors that we have on this earth. So I'm sure you would agree with that. Yeah, very nice. And thanks for all those who are joining, also the ones on Periscope. I can see that. Very nice to have you on Facebook, of course, my lovely Facebook with all my friends there. So thank you very much. And thank you for Osprey Mama for some donations too, and also GoPro creations, of course. Thank you. So here we go. Let's talk about crows. Now, crows are so interesting because we tend to ignore them, and we hear all kinds of stories about crows, but they're actually absolutely fascinating. Maybe because they're so black, we don't actually see them similar to ravens. You know, I remember Jack Molan always pointing out, well, you try and photograph a raven and it will look away and it'll get away. Well, I did get a few good images of ravens, but it seems to be very difficult. Crows are really intelligent, or are they? And what is the definition of intelligence? Is this something that we really understand? Because all the intelligence and any benchmark of intelligence is always our own, and things that we do not understand we consider as unintelligent. So that comes right to the next contribution from Kevin McGowan from Cornell University in it's the Cornell lab in New York State. And I think you're going to enjoy this. So it's all about the crow. He's been observing them for all his life. And I think he's probably the leading expert in crows in the world. So here we go.
Hi, I'm David Bird. I'm down here at downtown Vancouver at the International Ornithological Congress. And I'm sitting here with a very good friend, Kevin McGowan, who is employed at the Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology and knows a heck of a lot about crows, one of the world's foremost authorities on that species. Kevin, before we get into the crows, can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved in birds and birding?
I've always liked animals. I've always liked birds. Yeah. That's been a lifelong passion of mine since I was a little kid. Yeah. When I got into birds, I think was when I was somewhere around 12 or 13. Okay. And my sister and I knew where my parents hid the Christmas presents, and what I found was when we went in to look at the Christmas presents when my parents would go away, there was the Golden Guide Field Guide to Birds of North America.
I grew up in that one.
And at that point, I thought I knew a lot about birds, but I didn't. And it's like I thought there was the hawk and the duck and the sparrow, and it turns out there were dozens of them. And so during that time before then in Christmas, I actually begged off going out to eat with my family a few times so I could go in the closet and read the book. And by the time Christmas came around, I'd read the entire book.
But let me clarify, the book, was it a gift for you? Or
yes, it was a gift for me.
Oh, yeah. Okay, all right.
But as I said, my sister and I used to, Santa Claus hid these things, preceding the house for
So
whatever.
Unlike me, I was always a raptor guy, but my spark bird was an Anna's hummingbird doing an amazing display down in Tempe, Arizona that got me turned on to all birds. I like sparrows, I like pigeons, I like the whole gamut and so on. But you have a group of birds that you particularly like and that you recognize as knowing a lot about, and that's the crows.
That's right.
Why did you get involved in crows?
Actually, I got involved in crows to save my sanity when I was working on my dissertation work. Okay. I was working on Florida scrub jays, as you know, and I did 5 years of field work sort of thing, and then almost 2 years of just sitting in the lab writing it up. And I realized this isn't fun. I am not having fun sitting here inside doing this stuff. Why not? And so I happened to be biking into my office one morning, and I saw a pair of fish crows. This is in Tampa, Florida. Yep. I saw a pair of fish crows fly into a palm tree, and I thought, oh, maybe they have a nest there. And then I thought, have I ever seen a crow's nest? I've never seen a crow's nest.
Okay.
And I thought, okay, I'm going to look just because I want to see what a crow's nest looked like. And it turned out it wasn't one there, but there were a dozen of them around campus that I found.
Yeah.
And so, being an ornithologist, I started to look in the literature to see, well, how long do they incubate eggs, and when are they going to come out of the nest? And what I found is there's no information about the biology of that animal, just none. Yeah. And so I started watching the crows for an hour or two every morning, and that did it. That was all I needed. It was like, yes, I got into this field to look at birds, not to crunch data and write about stuff. And so that really helped me out. So when I moved to Ithaca to work at Cornell, I needed to start a new research project, and there were American crows. There were a few fish crows, but mostly American crows. Yes. And at the time, I knew they were cooperative breeders, and I knew that not every single individual helped. There was a little bit in the literature about that. Yeah. And so I thought, at the time, there was this sexy hypothesis about a non-selected, non-adaptive reason for cooperative breeding. The crows might be a good model to study it. So I started working on them. Turned out they're a rotten model to study that stuff with, because they're too freaking hard to catch. And they're trap wary for sure, and they travel long distances and during the day. And I was working on scrub jays where the average nest height was 1 meter, and they liked us, and they would come over and land on our hands, and we could see who was there. Crows not like that. No. So, but what I found was that there was enough questions I could answer, and the birds themselves were fascinating. And so as I started working on them, I got to know more and more and more about them. And they were cooperative breeders. They do have incredibly complex family lives and social lives, multifaceted social lives. They're kind of like us. I mean, very much like Western human society. And so I just haven't stopped.
Speaking of which, what would you regard as being the smartest birds on the planet, the corvids or the parrots?
I don't tend to think of smart and intelligence the way other people do.
Okay.
I think that worrying about bird intelligence is kind of a red herring. That it's gonna, if all you're interested in are the smart birds, you're going to miss out on all the really cool things that birds do throughout the world. And they do stuff we don't even know how they do. I mean, again, I say, is it smart to be able to fly from here to Argentina and back and find the same tree you sat in last year? We say no, because we can't do that. Right? So I don't get into the intelligence. Plus, if you look at all the birds of the world, all the animals of the world that exist, it's not the smart ones that are prospering.
Yes, that's very true.
Think about it. What's like the most successful organism, let's say, animal on Earth? Cockroaches, right? They've been around since the Carboniferous. And cockroaches have a very simple processing.
True.
Movement, run away, run to the dark, avoid the light, and they are not processed. If they had to stop and say, "Oh wait, is this the same guy who was here yesterday?" Is this? They get smushed.
All right.
So
we'll move on. I have a question for you about crows that's always puzzled me. I've heard that crows will drop rocks onto the glass roofs of the Kremlin, among other places, and they'll also chew on windshield wipers sometime on the rubber, and they'll also peel off the plastic off brand new cars. Why would they do these things?
Good question. Don't really have a complete explanation for that. The rock dropping thing has to do with the way they handle hard-shelled food. And so they drop nuts and crabs and clams and things like that onto beaches where it's hard sand, and so that particular thing of, oh, here's a wide open space and I've got something hard that may have food in it, maybe I'll drop it on there. That's probably what the origin of that. Don't know why they would do that. The only reason I can think of is that they're young birds. And the young birds in the first year of life, it takes like 2 years for a crow to be not a kid anymore, to be adult and to be dignified, totally crow-like. They're always messing around before then, and especially the first year. There's a lot of what we could call play, which is practice behavior, where they're essentially doing appropriate things with inappropriate objects. So instead of hammering on a nut or an acorn to open it up, they'll hammer on a leaf or a twig, and they'll take a stone and they'll go hide it like they would cache that. And so I imagine that what these birds were doing was the rock. If they found these rocks, they were sort of an appropriately nut-sized thing, and so they were sort of practicing their moves with that. Now, as to the rubber gaskets and the windshield, field whitebirds. I don't know. But I think that, again, it's probably young birds that are investigating the world. And I think the rubber would be a very interesting substance to them, because it's pliable enough that it gives, but it's tough enough that it has resistance. And I think that they're exploring the texture of the material, and then finally get to the point where they can rip it and say, okay, that's how much it takes to do. Let me see if I can do this other one too. So I'll get another one.
So it's kind of like adaptive play behavior. I was once told that turkey vultures, the reason they peck at shingles and pull shingles off and so on there is it strengthens their neck muscles for pulling a prey. Keith Billstein of Hawk Mountain Sanctuary told me that as a possibility for that.
Sure.
But let's move on to a broader subject. You work for the Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology, which is world famous.
I do.
What are some of the things that the Cornell Lab does?
Holy moly. We give away a lot of information. I helped build 15 years ago the All About Birds website, which for North Americans, if you put in if you Google the name of any common bird in North America, you're going to find us in the top things, because this is information. We decided long ago that we wanted to be involved in the internet. I remember a meeting where we sat around and Fitz said, should we have a website? And I voted yes.
Fitz is the director, John Fitzpatrick.
John Fitzpatrick, the director of the lab. Yep.
Yeah.
And he was active. At the time, it wasn't clear how big this internet thing was going to be.
Yeah.
And so we decided to adopt it early. Yeah. And we realized there was a lot of information that was coming out on the internet, and we wanted to make sure that it was good information.
Right.
And so we decided to do that, to actually step forward and make sure we had good information that came out on the internet. Yeah. Now that's stuff that we gave away for free. I work with our Bird Academy site, where we do a little bit more than that, more than just put out basically a book. That we actually have courses to help people get trained in ornithology and bird identification and enjoying birds, things like that too. So those are a couple of big things that we offer to the general public.
There's so many other things you could talk about or whatever, but I think people, if they just Google Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology, will find out that they're doing so many things to help birds, and that they're always looking for donations, and people should do that.
Right, we are a membership organization. All of the things that we do, all the good stuff we do, the money comes from memberships, which is a big part of it, donations and grants. We get nothing from the university. We're affiliated with Cornell University, and it's a great partnership, but they actually take money from us. We put money in every year, and so we do appreciate anybody joining. Plus you get some discounts on things like our courses, also our magazine, which is spectacular. And staying spectacular for 30 years or so now in the guise it is.
It's a pleasure talking to you, Kevin.
Thank you, David.
Always a great work in the Crows, man, and the public outreach. It's great stuff. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much too.
Well, isn't that interesting? I think if you weren't stunned by this interview, I wouldn't know what stuns you. I mean, the depth of the people that have been interviewed, and you just saw Kevin McGowan from the Cornell Ornithological Lab talking about the intelligence of crows, what intelligence is, and also about the cockroach. Yes, don't we hate the cockroach? And yet it seems to be so superior to us. It's the absolute survivor, right? And till now, I'm an electrical engineer, up to now, there is not a single intelligent mechanism that we can put in the size of a cockroach that would be so maneuverable and so intelligent as a cockroach. Even though its brain is fairly simple, it knows exactly what to do. Oh yes, very interesting, isn't Sherry? And I can see Amanda's comments also, and Osprey Mama, a lot of discussions going on there. And thanks also for all the people again that have just joined still on Periscope. You're very welcome. So this is SassePhoto, the channel where we make things happen on a Friday. It's all about education, raptors and birds and so on. And you're very welcome to contribute. So very well, in the next, let me just check my list here. Yes. So now we're going to Rome, Italy. Those of you who've been into Rome typically think of the Colosseum and many beautiful things, or the Vatican, or other sites that you have in Rome, right? That's what you think when you think of Rome. But did you know that there are actually birds in Rome, and also peregrine falcons that play a major role? Well, here we jump to an expert who lives in Rome and follows these birds. And I actually found a beautiful clip from the BBC that I'm going to put in to give you a taste of what actually the bird life is like in Rome. And I promise you, I had no idea what it was like, and it's really exciting. So come to the Italian world. Let's jump to lovely Rome, where all the food and the excitement, the style of life, where gesticulating with your hands is normal. That's the Italian life. So let's jump right into Rome, and let's see what Professor Bird has to say. So give me just a second. Jump in here.
Hi, I'm David Bird. I'm attending the International Ornithological Congress here in downtown Vancouver at the Vancouver Convention Center. I'm sitting here with a very, very good friend, Giacomo Dell'Omo of Rome, Italy. We've known each other for a lot of years, gone to a lot of bird of prey conferences together, and he has credit for teaching me how to cook pizzas in the backyard in Italy. Giacomo, how did you get involved with birds in the first place? Why are you here?
I mean, my interest for birds is very old. So since I was young, I was interested in particularly owls and kestrels.
Owls and kestrels.
Yes. And I found the first kestrel in Rome. I was raising kestrels.
Okay.
And breeding kestrels and owls in captivity.
Yes.
And then my attention to the behavior and my interest became scientific.
Okay.
And then eventually I became a scientist, and I started working on, because originally I was working not on birds, I was working on mammals.
On mammals?
Yeah.
But you saw the light and started turning to birds?
Yes, yes,
okay.
yes. And then I could manage to move more and more to birds, and now I'm working on birds.
So when I was visiting you in Rome, you took me to some interesting places. We were looking at some birds of prey nesting on our power lines.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
There were kestrels, because we set up a population of more than 200 kestrels around Rome, all nesting on power lines and on nest boxes.
In nest boxes?
In nest boxes, yes. And we still follow this population. So we did a lot of studies, behavioral, physiological, eco-behavioral studies. And so we raise up a lot of students that are still going and still following this study. But at that time there were only kestrels, no peregrines.
Ah, okay. Well, we'll come to the peregrines in a minute, but I also want to talk about our wonderful ride through downtown Rome on your motorcycle. And you were taking me, we were going about 120 kilometers an hour at the fastest speeds, and narrowly missing the side view mirrors. Yes, it's true, but it was a wonderful experience. But we were really on our way to the Roman Baths, and you had permission to take me up into the these ancient ruins and so on, and we were looking for owls. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, because at that time there was a high concentration of raptors in Rome, into the historical places.
Right.
There were 16 nests of kestrels in the Colosseum areas,
okay,
and also tawny owls and also other owls, because Rome has plenty of starlings coming for wintering, and also they breed in the town. So it's a town that offers a lot of feeding opportunities for falcons and owls.
Okay.
And therefore we have a part of our study that is on urban birds.
Yes.
And we were always in a hurry, so that's why I ran so fast, because we had to visit several nests on one day at the same time.
Okay.
So sorry for high speed.
So way back in the 70s, how many pairs of peregrine falcons were there in downtown Rome?
None.
Not a one.
Not a single one.
How many are there today?
Today we have 20 pairs of peregrines in Rome.
20 pairs?
20 pairs.
Double the number that I see in Montreal, including its bridges.
You have 10 in Montreal?
We have 10 territories that are active each year, but many of them are on skyscrapers and in quarries, all on the island of Montreal, but this also includes birds nesting on bridges. Are most of the birds in Rome on buildings as opposed to bridges?
Exclusively on buildings, yes. And if you go back to 2005, there were not a single peregrine in Rome. So the first one nested in a nest box that we placed at the university.
Yes.
And then following this good experience, we started placing nest boxes in all tall buildings.
Yes.
So every building is above 45 meters.
Right.
And then you can be more or less sure that a peregrine will visit this nest and eventually nest on this.
And so you didn't do any releases of peregrines in cities anywhere?
No, not at all. These birds, they came from the outside of Rome. They were breeding on cliffs.
Yes.
And we were following at that time also some birds outside Rome.
Yes.
But the population in all the region has increased.
Yes.
So in the last 15 years, we doubled the number of peregrines in our region.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And what kind of dangers do nesting peregrines in cities face?
Traffic, because at fledging, most of the chicks fall down. But since we have cameras in the nest,
yes.
there is an early warning by all those watching cameras that inform us to go there quickly.
Yes.
And I would say that 80% of the falls we were able to recover the birds.
Yes. And so you're basically babysitting these birds. If you stop doing that, what do you think would happen to the population?
No, the population is going pretty well. I think that we are observing now some density population related effect. Yes.
So you're getting some aggression between pairs looking for territories and places to nest.
No, but we have a lower productivity in nests because you expect this to see probably when preys or when interference of breeding pairs in proximity. Because we estimate that not less than 54 peregrines fledged this year.
Oh wow! That's more than 2 young per nest. That's great. In the cities of Edmonton and Montreal in Canada, we actually had some birds fighting over territories and actually killing each other to try and get a territory.
And I'm in touch with other people in other peregrine in cities. And I've heard there is a peregrine in England, is maybe Exeter. And these peregrines were specifically attacking buzzards.
Oh, okay.
And this pair was able to kill more than 50 buzzards.
Oh my God,
around this
that's
nest.
amazing.
Yeah, it was.
What about other dangers like mirror side buildings or wind shears?
The first report this year in Milano, not in Rome. There was a chick that hit the glass of the skyscraper was placed in the nest. So that's the first reported case of a peregrine hitting a glass.
So it's not a big serious problem.
No, but what we found is that these peregrines do not behave like peregrines. So the name peregrines means the name of a bird that is expected to fly for long distances, like pilgrims, peregrine pilgrims. But our birds, they do not move from city. They stay all in this running. So they don't leave, and even those that were migrating, we were supposing dispersing. After some time, they returned in the vicinity.
Giacomo, it was a real pleasure talking to you, and keep up the good work. I want to see 40 pairs of peregrines in another 10 years from now.
Then it will be a problem with pigeon fencers.
Okay, all right. Okay. There's another danger you didn't talk about. All right, another time.
I'm a pigeon fencer too.
Yes.
I'm a conflicting interest with the peregrine and pigeons. That's the point.
Thank you very much, man.
Okay.
Thank you. That was great.
Well, wasn't that interesting, right? I mean, here we went into the middle of Rome, and I had no ideas. I always saw Rome as a very crowded, well, sometimes hectical, polluted city because they never managed to do any underground because of all the historical, because of all the archaeology. So Rome has a lot of unsolved problems as far as traffic is concerned. And then you see these incredible, did you see that? Those were starlings, by the way. That was an excerpt from a BBC documentary. And I'm fairly sure that that Giacomo, who we just saw interviewed, was probably part of this BBC documentary. A peregrine falcon chasing millions of starlings. They're quite incredible. What a sight, isn't it? So that was quite remarkable. So I'm having there's some of you coming and going, so thank you for those where it's getting quite late from wherever you are, and thank you for those who've just joined. I see Christy Ace has just joined. Just taking a look here. I can see a lot of people here from Periscope have also joined. Well, thank you for joining, and really wonderful. Nice to see Alice again. Yeah, I said that before. Very nice. Okay, so let's see whom we have next. Thank you, Kathy Harter, also, and also thank you to Sherry M for some donations. I really appreciate that. That's what keeps us alive. It takes a lot of the really contributions. Also, thank you for all those on Patreon that contribute and keep us alive. It's really much appreciated. It's completely non-for-profit what I'm doing here. It's all at own expense, and so anything that helps is very welcome. Thank you. So let's see who we have next. Now we're jumping to Israel. Did you know that I grew up in so many countries, and it's so remarkable. My father was a German diplomat, so unfortunately he's deceased now. But I was born in London, grew up in South Korea, Germany, then Israel, and that's where we're going to go now. Israel for 3 years, then South Africa, and that's where we're going next, and so on. So it's quite something. Iran, I was in Iran when the Shah fell and Khomeini took over. The whole big drama at that time that happened in Iran, I actually saw that in Tehran. Then I was in Sri Lanka several times during my studies. I studied in Germany, and my parents then moved to Sri Lanka, and then back to Durban, South Africa. My sister's still in South Africa, my other sister's in Munich. I myself originally then married a South African, lived in, then she spoke Swedish, so then we went to Sweden. That was after my PhD. I went to Sweden, learned Swedish there. Then I had twins. We then moved to, just tell you a bit of my history quickly, moved to England. Unfortunately, my wife died there of an aneurysm, which was very tragic. So I then raised up my children on my own, moved to Canada where I am now, and I'm happily married again with a Brazilian. So very, that's my life. It is, I think life is so exciting. You only live once. And that's what I do. I mean, I've had my cross to bear too. So those of you who think I just have a happy life, we all have things that we go through. But you know, I was very lucky that I was enriched by my father for so many years. And so we're going to go to Israel, where you know there's often an incredible conflict between Israel and Palestine. But then there are these incredible people who actually do everything they can to alleviate the tension there in the Gaza Strip and other areas that you have in Israel. So our next, the next person is Professor Yossi Leshem, and he is a researcher at the Department of Zoology and the Faculty of Life Science of Tel Aviv University. I grew up in Herzliya, by the way, many years ago, and I went to school in Jaffa. That was a Scottish school, Church of Scotland. So it was a very conservative school, by the way. So quite exciting life I've had. Lots of memories of very strict teachers and so on. So let's jump right into Israel now and listen to what Professor Leshem has to say. Very interesting. And I'm also going to play some videos so you can see the work that he's actually doing, some video that I found of him. So here we go.
Hi, I'm David Bird. I'm here at the International Ornithological Congress, downtown Vancouver at the Convention Center, and I'm sitting here with a very, very dear friend of mine for about 30 years, Yossi Leshem of Israel. I don't think I've ever met anybody with so much energy and enthusiasm as this man. He easily outstrips me, and he's done some incredible things in Israel for wildlife, and in particular we're interested in birds. Yossi, how did you first get involved with birds and nature and so on? How old were you?
71, old stuff, almost finished.
Okay.
Basically, since I was a small boy, I was fascinated by flight.
Okay.
And later on, I was very keen to be an Israeli combat pilot. But at the age of 17, I got glasses. And in that time, Israeli Air Force, you can't be a pilot if you have glasses.
So you became a tank commander?
I was a battalion artillery commander. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
I'm still, but then finally, I did a big study for the Israeli Air Force because Israel is in a junction of 3 continents. 500 million birds pass over Israel twice a year.
Yes.
1 billion birds, no tax, no permits, and this is of course a big story for bird lovers.
Yes.
But for the Air Force, it was a disaster.
Yes.
So I made a study. I flew the motorized glider for 272 days with the same flock of birds every day, mainly with raptors, but we are both screened on raptors. So from the Egyptian border to the Lebanese border, day after day, and I mapped the height of the temas, and immediately we made a program, and we reduced the collision with birds by 76%, saving them $1.5 billion.
And you did this by getting together some amazing guests around the table to talk about this. Can you talk about that for a second?
For example, we got Angela Merkel. We got her excited about our studies with the satellite. So she gave us money to follow German storks through Israel up to South Africa. And we developed it as a big website that about 400 schools are now following our storks online.
But I think the most amazing thing you did there, Yossi, is when you got all those different Middle Eastern countries, which are enemies of each other, sitting at the table.
Yeah, so the big story was that we started to use the barn house as pest control agent because they were using a lot of pesticide in the entire Middle East. So we started to put nesting boxes for barn house. We have now 4,000 nesting boxes.
4,000
4,000 only in Israel. And then we went to the Jordanian and the Palestinian. We told them this is the big benefit, but for them it was a problem because Muslims believe it's a bad omen.
Oh, yes,
so
of course.
and we have here in the conference the general.
Yes.
After the first day, we made a seminar on the barn house.
Yeah.
He told me, Yossi, this is a great story. Change the bird, and I'm in the project because but then they understood, and now he is all the time promoting the barn house as a symbol of peace and not a bad luck, and a symbol of an advantage.
Actually changed some culture.
Yeah, so totally changing the culture of the farmers.
Well.
So we have now about 300 Jordanian farmers and 200 Palestinian farmers, and it's expanding.
Yes.
And we gave here the lecture, and I think people got really amazed of how an Israeli and Palestinian and Jordanian are together friends, and it works.
Yes.
So it's also people to people. It's not only an environmental issue.
So is the barn owl now the national bird of Israel?
No, the national bird of Israel is the hoopoe.
Yes,
but we
why?
made why? Because as you are trying now in Canada, we are a democracy. On the 60th of Israel, the anniversary, we got the school children, the army, the public. 1.1 million people voted for the hoopoe.
Yeah.
Some people are asking me always, so why the hoopoe? I told them it's like why our Bibi Netanyahu. The people voted them.
Okay.
So this is our national bird.
Yes.
From our project with the barn owl, we think the dove failed as a symbol of peace, and we believe now the barn owl is the symbol of peace in the Middle East.
Sounds good to me as a raptor guy.
Yeah.
I also know you've been interactive with school children in another way, in a big way around the world. Could you tell us a little about that program with the internet?
Yeah, so we developed a program that we put, first of all, we put the idea is the school from other countries can communicate with other schools, mainly with urban raptors like the lesser kestrels, and we have the swifts now, and the swifts are nesting in the Western Wall, the holiest place for the Jews, in the Church of Nativity in Bethlehem, and in Mosque in Amman. So we believe that the swifts can also get through religious to more people. So we are now aiming to the Pope, because if the Pope will adopt the swift, we have 1 billion birders. Okay. So that's the idea.
And you've mentioned birds in the cities and so on. You've also had a program, you've now got lots of falcons and other birds nesting in cities. What have you done to encourage that?
So we made a lot of nesting boxes also in the cities, for the swift, for example. We made hundreds of nesting boxes, and the swift is so easy to see. More than that, we are also with the Israeli army, with the chief of staff, we raised from our foundation, the Hoopoe Foundation, $10 million, and every commander in the army who makes a project for the environment gets from us $100,000. And the chief of staff is leading it. So we have from one project 5 years ago, we have now 51 commanders who are doing it. For example, the Hubara. People were talking about the Hubara, which is extincting for the Middle East. In one of the air bases near Beersheba, the biggest air base in Hatzerim, all the Hubaras, because its fans are coming after the nesting season and are there. So the army adapted the place, which is the most important place for Hubaras.
Yossi, you're an amazing guy. The world thanks you for all your efforts with the birds and so on. Incredible. I really enjoyed talking to you.
And he's my best buddy.
Well, wasn't that interesting? It's really wonderful to see. 1 second, I'm just going to try and blend them out here. Yeah, there we go. It's so wonderful to see how people all over the world make these so-called small contributions that make a big difference, and it's incredible to see the energy. I mean, when I was in Israel, I was always amazed, And I do have to tell you a quick story about Israel, because I think it brings a lot of memories. I was in Israel from 1970 to 72, so I was just, I was just over 10 years old. And I remember, because I was German, it's a very interesting story. At that time, I thought there would be big resentments against the Germans by the Israelis. What I found was surprising. When I was on the bus, for example, there would be a Jewish person, and he would take, he would roll down his sleeve, and he would show me still the number that they had from the concentration camps in there, and he would be very friendly to me and explain that. And this was something that absolutely moved me as a child. By the way, I can say my family was in the resistance movement. They were all executed by the Nazis, so we have quite a history with the White Rose. Interesting anyway. So that was to Israel. So let's jump to South Africa now. Now, South Africa is my beloved South Africa, where I also went to school after after Israel. So now we're going to South Africa. That has an incredible kaleidoscope of birds and nature. It is just absolutely incredible. It's no wonder that there are so many experts in South Africa, not only for diamonds and so on, for minerals, as many know, but also when it comes to nature. So let's jump to South Africa to Professor, let me just, Peter, what was it? 1 second. Let me just jump in quickly so I give you the names correctly. Yes, this is Professor Peter Ryan. He is from Cape Town University, lovely Cape Town. If you've never seen South Africa and Cape Town with a beautiful Table Mountain, you have to see it. If you've never been to the Kruger Park or any of these beautiful national parks, you've got to see it. I may go to South Africa, and I'm still debating with myself, going one month maybe to South Africa in January, February, if I have the time to stay with my sister there and maybe do some live broadcasts from South Africa to show you the beautiful nature there. What would you say to that? So I'm still debating with myself. I've got some ideas. I might be doing that and working from South Africa. It's quite incredible country. So let's jump straight to South Africa now. So this is Professor Peter Ryan. He's the next guest.
This is David Bird at the IOC Congress 2018 at the Vancouver Convention Center downtown, having the great pleasure of interviewing Peter Ryan of the Fitzpatrick Institute of African Ornithology in Cape Town. He gave an amazing plenary lecture this morning, and what you're going to be hearing from his lips in this interview will absolutely astound you if you love birds. Peter, could you please tell me a little bit about how you got involved with birds?
Yeah, well, I guess like a lot of people, I started off really young. I was actually born in the UK.
Okay.
And I think in the UK you're so starved for any kind of wildlife that by the age of 7 I had my first binoculars. Yeah. And then I had the good fortune of moving to Cape Town when I was 10 years old.
Oh, 10?
And it was just a revelation. You know, I had lizards in the garden, and it was just wildlife out the wazoo. And I mean, you know, the Western Cape is just an incredible place. We've got one of the 6 floristic kingdoms of the world just in that part. 9,000 species of plants, 80% found nowhere else. So it was just an incredible place to go. But somehow I stuck with birds. You know, birds had hooked me early, so I stayed with birds, and I was a mad keen bird watcher from an early age.
How'd you go from being a 10-year-old kid loving birds to where you are today? How'd you get there?
Well, I guess I was a pretty antisocial teenager and just stayed watching birds and got involved with various projects with people at the University of Cape Town. And living in Cape Town, you know, you kind of get pulled towards the sea as well. So I had a real passion to go to the sub-Antarctic, to those islands there. And so it was an easy transition from school to the university to do a degree in sort of zoology and botany. And then the crossroads came when I finished my honours year, and I was offered a position as a museum biologist in Namibia, in freshwater biology. A real job. But there was this funny project on plastic ingestion in seabirds, which really at that stage didn't seem particularly exciting, but it meant going to Gough Island and to Marion Island. And I was like, job, Gough Island, Marion Island, let's go to the islands. So I took the masters, did a couple of years working on plastic ingestion in seabirds back in the 1980s, way before it was really a big deal. And then did my PhD looking at the evolution of finches on the Tristan Islands.
So you didn't stick with the seabird, you went to finches as a sideline.
Well, yeah, I mean, they were still on a seabird island, but working on land birds.
That's your connection.
Yeah, and then actually came over to the States for a bit as a postdoc, taught at UC Davis for a bit, but then got a position back in Cape Town, and I've been there ever since.
And so this is the Fitzpatrick Institute of African Ornithology. Could you tell us just a little bit about what are some of the different things they're doing there to study birds, conserve birds?
Yeah, so a few years ago we were recognized as a national center of excellence, and our sort of theme is birds as keys to biodiversity conservation. So we try to marry good science with conservation. So we do a lot of work in collaboration with BirdLife partners around the world, particularly in Africa, looking at kind of giving them solid science to underpin making a difference. So I think it's really a nice mix, and the students, I think, really appreciate it. You know, a lot of students these days, they come to you and they say, I'm really interested in wildlife, but I also want to make a difference.
Right.
And I think, you know, the days of studying the minutiae of some system just for the sake of that is perhaps, you know, I think a lot of students these days want to do a bit more.
All right.
Give back.
So seabirds, that seems to be your main thing right now that you're connected with. Could you tell us just a few of the main challenges that seabirds are facing? We'll get to the problem that I want to talk to you about most later. But what are some of the main challenges they're facing?
Sure. So the thing about seabirds is they're a bit like long-distance migrants. They require multiple habitats to fulfill their mission in life, which is to create more seabirds, of course. So they face threats both at their breeding colonies, because they're constrained to breed on land still, but they also face a lot of threats out at sea. And so it's really just, you know, any organism these days that requires multiple habitats is in trouble, because we're so busy squashing down the natural bits of the planet.
And they're in trouble more than any other kind of birds, pointed out.
Well, that's a widely held conception. I think they're not as badly off as people might think. So one of the messages from the plenary was really, if we look back in history, the kind of threats that they've survived in the past, you know, there's room for optimism. Right. You know, yes, we're giving them a hard time, but if we can just ease off a little bit, I think they can come back really strong, which is a good thing. And there's certainly groups that are worse off now. So the old world vultures are just in a very, very dire situation.
Are we winning the battle with the longline fisheries problem and the albatrosses and other seabirds that are getting caught?
Yeah, I think we are. You know, BirdLife's Albatross Task Force has been making really good strides in that regard. And again, it's obviously a difficult problem to tackle, particularly on the high seas.
What is the problem exactly?
Okay, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
It's okay.
So, the longline fishing is like industrial angling.
Yes.
You've got a ship there with maybe 5,000 hooks and a machine that puts bait on the hook and throws it over the back.
I'm a fisherman, I know what you're talking about.
Do you like my slide about, you know,
I did.
fishermen
lie? Yes, I did.
cheat.
Yes, I laughed when I saw that because it's partly true.
Of course it's true. So all these bits of food get thrown off the back, and it's like free food for the birds.
Right.
So unless you do it in a sensible way, you're going to catch a lot of birds.
Yes.
And we were aware of this problem towards the end of the 1980s. And we've been working with the industry for some time to sort out the problem. And there's a couple of really simple things that they can and have done to sort out the problem. Some fisheries are harder to manage than others, depending on where the line has to sit in the water and so on. But we're getting there. You know, most of the world's fisheries, the catch rates are steadily dropping in terms of the number of birds, and that's not just because they're fewer birds, it's because they're really catching fewer birds. And the nice thing about working with bycatch issues is that, generally speaking, the fishermen are receptive to the idea. They're aware that they need to have a reasonably green image, and so it's in their interest not to catch birds. Every bird they catch is one less fish caught as well. So it's easy to tackle that problem.
So you mentioned that they have problems at sea, so that's one of them. That's the main one. There's also plastic pollution, which we won't get into right now. But you also mentioned that they have problems on land. And maybe you could tell us a little bit about the cat problem on Marion Island, because that was astounding, that story.
Okay, can I backtrack a little?
No, go ahead, because he'll edit all this.
He'll edit it out. Okay. So the really tricky and thorny problem at sea is where the fisheries and the birds are competing for the same food, and that's where you've got fishermen and birds going head to head, and that's a much trickier problem to deal with. And we in Southern Africa have a real problem with the disappearance of pelagic fish from the west coast.
Right.
Cape gannet, African penguin, Cape cormorant, bank cormorant, all of our endemic seabirds breed nowhere else in the world, are all endangered. That's really disturbing. You know, something like an African penguin is probably less than 2% of what it was historically.
Wow.
And there's this iconic bird, you know, only penguin in Africa, and it's hanging on.
Yes.
So that's really worrying, and that's where we have challenges still in terms of, you know, what are the appropriate tools, because it's not easy to get fishermen to cut back.
Yes.
You know, so you go to them and you say, well, can you stop fishing around this island? They go, no, I've been going there for years.
Of course.
You know, so that's a much trickier one, and really that's got to be tackled at a higher sort of policy level. So we need governments to enshrine the concept of this sort of environmental approach to fishing. And in South Africa we have legislation, it's in the legislation, but it's not really translating into action on the ground.
I'm personally going through this right now because here in the Gulf Islands, I love to fish for salmon with my little whaling boat, whaler, and we've been told that we can't fish in my traditional places anymore because the orcas are suffering, and they're eating the same fish that I want to catch, the Chinook.
Yep.
And so I've dutifully fished in other places now to obey the law and allow the orcas to have their opportunity to feed.
Yeah, it's really tough. I mean, we had a fascinating case in South Africa where penguins actually colonized a beach. So early 1980s, the penguins at the island at that stage, they had the largest penguin population, African penguin population in the world. The penguins there were not happy, and the babies were looking for somewhere new, and they started 3 new colonies, and one of them was an urban beach in Cape Town. So these poor people who were living there quite happily, they'd been there for, you know, maybe 30, 40 years, could walk down to the beach and have a swim. Suddenly they were told, you can't go to that beach anymore because the penguins have taken over. That's a really tough one. You know, normally it's people coming into contact with endangered species. Here the endangered species pitched up on their doorstep and said, you know, we like this beach. So we have some weird things.
We have a similar situation with piping plovers in our country here in Canada, with when they're nesting on certain beaches and people can't go there. But we have a lot of choices to go to. I can imagine that would be a little harder to take because probably the penguins probably chose a beach that people really love too.
Well, I think the real problem was that along with the penguins came, you know, sort of like 500,000 tourists, and that rather takes the little folksy atmosphere away from your village. But anyway, that's how it goes. Anyway, to get back to the colony problems. So historically, seabirds were really challenged by people going to their breeding colonies and harvesting eggs and chicks and adults.
Showed an amazing slide with all those eggs and those wagons, and I couldn't believe how many eggs they were taken away from those poor birds.
Yeah, I mean, so that's a picture from Leshem in Hawaii, and I mean, it's just shocking that you can. And there's this poor albatross sitting there, you know, and he's surrounded by just wheelbarrows full of eggs, and it's like,
it was
you know,
amazing.
what are you doing, bird? It's just crazy, you know. And the other thing to really say about these birds is that the truly pelagic species, as I was saying this morning, you know, they only lay 1 egg at a time. They'll only raise at most 1 chick a year. Some of them maybe only 1 chick every 2 years, and so they really can't tolerate much of this extractive kind of behavior. But fortunately, we've become a little bit more enlightened, and in most parts of the world these days, that direct exploitation has really been scaled right back. And so the big challenge now for birds on islands is the things that we've taken to those islands and left there. And sometimes we did it deliberately, so people would go around and put a few rabbits on an island, or maybe some mink or whatever, just in case we want to, you know, go and get some fur at some stage, or if we ever get shipwrecked, we'll have something to eat. These islands are very special places with these rather delicate ecosystems, and once you have these things in there, it can really mess things up.
Even their guano was coveted by humans. White gold.
Yeah, took all the shit as well, and that's had consequences today. The African penguins, you know, the best place they can breed is in guano because it forms a nice, well-draining, sort of insulated habitat in which to burrow. And now the guano has been stripped down to bedrock, and the penguins are sitting out in the open. They're exposed to sun, they're exposed to predators. Climate change impacts are greater, so we're busy putting out artificial burrows and things, but that's not the same as guano. So
let's turn our attention to cats and mice.
Yeah, so introduced predators are a really big problem on islands, and so in South Africa we have one kind of island out in the middle of the sub-Antarctic, a suite of islands called Prince Edward Islands, coincidentally rather similar to your Canadian ones. But these are really very special places. So the 2 islands between them support now almost half of the world's wandering albatrosses. Really amazing place to go. Lots of albatrosses and penguins and petrels, and really very, very special. But unfortunately, on the bigger island, mice were introduced by sealers back in about the early 1800s. Accidentally with their provisions when they came to harvest seals, they took a few mice ashore, and now the island is overrun with mice. And when South Africa annexed Marion Island in 1947, they put a little weather station on, and the guys took a few cats down just to control the mice around the base.
Not the same sex, I understand.
No, unfortunately not. I think it was supposed to be, but they weren't very good at sexing them, obviously. And So within 20 years we had about 2,000 cats, which doesn't sound too bad, 2,000 cats, the island's 300 square kilometers. Those 2,000 cats were killing 450,000 burrowing petrels every year.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, just unbelievable. And they wiped out the diving petrels, the storm petrels, completely extirpated from the island, and all of the other burrowing petrels, and particularly the ones in winter when there was not much else for the cats to eat, really got hammered. So if you now go to Marion Island at night and you go out, there's maybe the odd bird flies past. If you go to Prince Edward, it's just a snowstorm of birds. So the impact is massive, and it has knock-on effects because now you've not got birds coming in and bringing nutrients from the sea, so vegetation changes and so on. And so in the mid-1970s, South Africa initiated a program to eradicate those cats.
And it was very successful.
It was a sustained effort. It was actually came down to really one individual, a guy called Martin Bester, who was able to motivate people to really put in the effort. So it started with introducing a feline flu, which cut the population down, but then it came down to grunt work and guys going out and...
Very rough-looking characters with guns. It looked like an old Western thing, these guns and so on.
It was a Wild West in those days. So these guys would go out at night with their shotguns with spotlights and just go look for cats over this rugged, cold, subantarctic, windy, wet terrain, see a glint and shoot it. And they knocked back most of them, and then towards the end they started to use other techniques, trapping and so on. And eventually by 1990 there were no more cats on the island.
But it had an unforeseen consequence.
It did. Well, it took a while to actually to kind of come to the fore, but having removed the cats, it left the mice on the island.
Yes.
And the old adage, when the cat's away, the mice will play. And unfortunately now the mice are proving problematic, and this is linked to climate change. What's happened over the last 30-40 years is the climate on Marion has become quite a lot drier and warmer, and this is allowing the mice to breed earlier each summer. And so their numbers are building up to higher and higher concentrations. And then at the end of summer, there's all these mice looking around, what are we going to eat?
Yes.
And the easy thing to go and attack maybe is a nice big fat seabird chick.
Yes. You showed some pictures in your plenary that absolutely blew everybody away, showing one particular picture showed an albatross chick with basically its skull chewed off and its brain almost showing. It looked like a scene out of that movie Silence of the Lambs, or one of the sequels with Hannibal Lecter. It was awful.
Yeah, it's pretty gross. So this behavior of the mice scalping is something that's quite recent. Okay. So we first discovered that mice were a problem for seabirds on Gough Island, and they mainly attack the rump of the albatrosses and the back, and they get into the fatty bits, and they eat their way right through the skin, through the body wall, and eventually the bird dies. It's really quite gross. But what's happened on Marion is that we've started having these attacks, particularly on the summer breeding albatrosses.
Yes.
So on Gough, it's mainly the winter breeding great albatrosses, the sort of wandering type albatrosses, and it's in the middle of winter, and they're big fluffy downy chicks. But on Marion, it's these birds that are just about to fledge, and they've got a dense layer of body plumage already.
Okay.
And we think the reason why they're attacking them on the head is because that's where the feathers are nice and short. And as the bird is sleeping, it's got its head tucked into its back feathers, and the back of the head is exposed. And so they just come and they just have a little nibble, and the albatross sort of sits up and shakes its head, and then it goes back to sleep, and they come and have another nibble.
Oh my God.
And eventually the chick just gets so weak that it can't resist, and it just sits there, and they just keep eating away at the head.
So what are you guys doing to combat the mice now?
So fortunately, thanks to our Kiwi friends, the New Zealanders have been pioneering the science of removing rodents from islands, and a lot of people said it was completely impossible, but they started small and they've slowly been scaling up. Started with hand baiting, and now it's helicopters, suite of helicopters flying over the island, all GPS controlled, with the bucket underneath, just dispensing rat poison, basically. And the islands have just been getting bigger and better, and the really exciting thing about this is it's a real step forward for conservation, because you're turning back the clock, you're restoring the island to what it was, and you don't have to worry about, you have to worry about them getting back there if people are stupid, but it's not an ongoing intervention, it's a one-off intervention that has potentially long-lasting for the duration of the island's lifespan.
You're asking the public to help out here too. They can donate funds?
So unfortunately these exercises are pretty expensive. It's quite a logistical exercise. You've got to get a team of people with helicopters and the bait, and Marion Island, which is the one that we're fundraising for at the moment. It's going to be by far the biggest island that mice have ever been attempted on, close to 300 square kilometers. So we're looking to raise about $3 million just for the bait.
Yes.
The South African government has come to the party with the logistic support. So they've chipped in about a similar kind of amount for the ships and the helicopters and so on. But we're trying to do a crowd fund sort of sourcing, whatever they call, to raise the money for the bait. So we're asking people to adopt 1 hectare of the island. It's $100 a hectare. If you're in the US or Canada, you can actually get a tax rebate on it.
So you can do it through Bird Studies Canada. There's an internet site for that, Bird Studies Canada. You can do it through that and get a tax receipt.
And in the US, there's a BirdLife partner that you can do it through as well and get the tax write-off, which is it's great. So we're only looking for 2,900 people, so it's not a huge number. And $100 isn't like going to break the bank for quite a lot of people.
So I guarantee when people see these photos, and they will see them in North America, that there will be a lot of people pouring money out of their wallets because they want to help out. Thank you so much, Peter, for this interview. It was great. I wish you the very, very best of success in this mouse culling program and getting our seabirds back.
Wonderful. Nice meeting you. Cheers.
Peter, quickly, 2 questions. The one... Yeah, that's it. So wasn't that interesting? My goodness. That was Professor Peter Ryan from University of Cape Town. So he alluded on so many things. That's very nice. You have this very small ecology and you can see how complex it is. Wherever we humans seem to be doing something, we mess things up. Well, first the introduction of mice, then the explosion of mice, trying to get them under control with cats didn't work, and so on. And now the New Zealanders are jumping in. So that is the Marion Islands, and he also, I think, is very important, his address here to the North Americans. If you want to adopt part of these islands, I think there were 2,900, if I remember correctly. You can buy a piece of land there, or adopt a piece of land for $100, and you'll be helping the eradication of mice and helping the albatross. Quite horrible to see this, isn't it? It is, but that's a fact of life. And it's quite incredible. Yeah, there's a question, doesn't the poison affect raptors then? And the answer to that I do actually know, because I asked Professor Peter Ryan that. That was Klingon Warbird. I remember that. The answer is no, it doesn't. So they know exactly what they're doing there. It's a study that he said it's also a short-term intervention to make a radical change. And then improve the life there. You can see how everything is interacting on a small scale. And if you put this on a global scale, we have really no idea what we're doing. It's quite scary, actually, quite scary. So interesting, yes. So that was South Africa. By the way, Boulder Beach was, no, he didn't directly mention Boulder's Beach, but he was mentioning the penguins in South Africa, which is very unique, by the way. I remember going many times, that is from Cape Town, you drive about an hour or 3/4 of an hour south to the Cape Peninsula. You come to Boulder Beach and you see these beautiful penguins. I don't know if it is still like that. It's been many years, but I do remember swimming among penguins, which is quite unique, having them right next to me. I think they have sort of stopped that now. I don't think it is open for tourism like that, but quite the experience I had there too. Very fortunate. But yeah, but Jackie Porter is asking, but what about the birds that eat the mice? Yeah, I don't know the exact answer to that, but I presume that the birds probably do not eat the mice. That is, otherwise he wouldn't suggest something like that. So again, I'm not the expert. I would have to ask Professor Peter Ryan. Maybe when I'm in Cape Town, I can go and visit him. Would be very interesting to talk to him really in the home territory when one's outside, isn't it? Christian, tell us about the kid pics behind you. Yes. Osprey Mama. I don't know. What I can tell you there is what I mentioned before, Osprey Mama. It was very beautiful being at the conference. So I have this huge wall, and what I'll do is I will show you different sections every time, every Friday. But this was some bird competition, and all I could see was that was at the Vancouver Ornithological Conference. It was just, my goodness, I don't remember how much it was. Maybe 300 feet of wall, or so, about 100 meters of wall, something around there. Just incredible. And I just took one picture after the next. I tried to make a huge picture, and this is just one part of it. A contribution to some competition that they had to contribute about all these beautiful pictures of birds around the world. It's really quite incredible, isn't it? So now we come to the final contribution of the evening, and then I will ask you a question. By the way, I did see, and I did see you answered the question. So what is the other a bird that has the word Canada in it? So of course the Canada goose or the Canada geese. So I'm not going to make it that simple. I'm going to give one question there. I'm going to throw in to make you think a little bit more, that was actually mentioned here from one of the contributors. So if you've paid attention, you will know the answer, or you can look it up. But that's going to be one question right at the end, because my goodness, it's 6:17 already here local time. So let's get to the final contribution here. Professor Jennifer Gill. You know what's so remarkable about all these people? They love what they do. And I'm very fortunate. I always have to smile when I hear them talk. I'm also very lucky that I can live out my passion and do what I actually want to. And you create your own space with your passion. That's really something that I can identify with it. If you are very passionate about something and you believe in something, you can make it happen. And I'm also very fortunate to be able to do that and also do these type of broadcasts with you. Amanda says, that's so cool you got to swim, yes, with penguins. It was quite amazing. Yes, it was. It was. That was a unique experience. I don't think that you can do that anymore. I know that there's a small movie called The City Slickers. You see these penguins, I remember the South African movies, walking into houses, and they became quite a nuisance because there were so many penguins. I don't know what the situation is now, but that was some years ago. Okay, let's jump to our final contribution. That is Jennifer Gill, Professor of Applied Ecology, University of East Anglia in Norwich, UK. Again, a place I know. I haven't met her in the UK, but again, I also you won't believe it, from year 2000 to 2006, I lived in the Midlands, Stafford in England. So again, an area I know. Isn't that quite amazing to be able to identify with all these different places? So every single person that was interviewed, I've actually been to the place or have lived there. Isn't that quite a privilege? So let's jump to the final talk about migration of birds, which is also changing with climate change. This is the final contribution. Here we go.
Hi, I'm David Bird here. I'm at the International Ornithological Congress 2018 at the downtown Vancouver Convention Center, and I'm speaking to Jennifer Gill of the University of East Anglia, who gave an amazing plenary session to almost 1,000 people, or 15 people, who gave an amazing plenary session yesterday to about 1,500 people. So, Jennifer, could you tell us a little bit about how you got involved with birds to begin with?
Yeah, well, that was really as an undergraduate back in Edinburgh, where I'm from in Scotland. So I was doing a zoology degree, and I got lucky in that there was a whole bunch of other people around at the time, PhD students and the like, who were working on birds. And that just sounded like fun. And so I said, you know, I volunteered to go help them, especially bird ringing, catching the birds. And there were lots of different projects going on, but there was particularly one person there who was working on shorebirds. And who was getting people to help him go catch the shorebirds out on the beach. And I went out with him on one occasion, and in particular, and he told me, in watching these birds, he showed me this juvenile shorebird arriving. This was in autumn, landing on the beach, and he said to me, that bird there has just flown here from the high Arctic, probably on its own.
That blew you away.
And I was sold. and that was it. And I've been fascinated by it ever since.
So it wasn't the typical story where you were a bird watcher since you were 7 years old or whatever, and you said, I'm going to study birds later on. You actually got involved in ornithology right from the get-go as an undergraduate.
Well, I mean, I went to university imagining that I would I'd get into genetics or something, but I very quickly learned that I'm hopeless in the laboratory. I just break everything.
You're a field person.
I'm a field biologist.
Okay. And so when you got that spark bird that got you into ornithology research, where did you go from there? Did you do a master's? Or?
Yep. Well, so that group of people around Edinburgh at the time provided loads of opportunities. I got into bird ringing with them, had loads of great experiences of that, and at the end of that, started applying for PhDs. And ended up very happily down at the University of East Anglia with a PhD on pink-footed geese, which is a species that breeds in Iceland, and for which at the time about 20% of the world population were going to East Anglia in the winter time, and causing some problems with the local farmers because there was some conflicts with agriculture, and so this is a very interesting issue to go and get into. So I spent my PhD figuring out ways in which, through understanding what the birds were looking for in their environment, we could manipulate the way farming operated to reduce the conflict between
pink-footed geese and black-tailed godwits, and you mentioned Iceland.
Yeah, that's the
so
key.
How did you get hooked onto Iceland?
Well, you know, all the way through my PhD, although I was working on geese, my heart was with shorebirds, going back to that early experience, and so towards the end of my PhD, I started looking for opportunities to work on shorebirds instead. And my supervisor at the time, Professor Bill Sutherland, we went on to go help with another project on geese a little bit further south in East Anglia in the summertime. It was late summer, so August, September, something like that. And we drove along the edge of this estuary, and I looked around, and there was a flock of beautiful Icelandic black-tailed godwits. And I turned to him and said, I want to work on them. And he went, okay, let's do it. So we devised a project that we could do on those birds, and it turned out to be the best decision I ever made. I didn't know that they would turn out to be the perfect model system for all the questions that have come since then. It was really lucky. And here I am nearly 3 decades later still working on these guys.
I have to insert here my own little personal story, and the reason I loved your talk so much and so on is that I was in Iceland last summer with my wife and my daughter, and I was actually getting closer and closer to a black-tailed godwit in the middle of one of those little wet fields and so on, and it was the first time I've ever seen one. Gorgeous orange color. And suddenly I heard my daughter on her phone talking to what I didn't know was to be her fiance, and he's an Englishman from near Brighton, and basically I after we got back in the car there, I said, put him on the phone, I want to talk to him. And I said, I've just seen my very first black-tailed godwit. I want to form the Brotherhood of Black-tailed Godwits with you. And he says, good. He says, we're the only 2 members. And he said, oh, my very first brotherhood. So
around the godwit.
Obviously Iceland and East Anglia and so on, we're talking about migration. Could you tell us a little bit about what's going on with migration in birds right now? They're facing some serious challenges and maybe some of the feats they can achieve.
Yeah, very much so. So, during the time that we've been working on these migratory systems, these last 2 or 3 decades, huge changes have taken place. Some of them are very interesting biological changes. So, particularly the timing of migration is changing. So, we're seeing birds arriving back onto their breeding grounds earlier in many species than they used to. So, it's very biologically interesting to work out what's going on there. Some of them are more worrying. Quite a lot of our migratory species are declining quite sharply at the moment. Across the world, we're seeing declines in abundance of these birds. So obviously we also want to try to work out what is going on there and what are the conservation actions that we're going to need to employ to try and halt and hopefully reverse some of these declines.
Is this a bit of a winner-loser situation? Because you hear about with climate change, there's going to be some winners and there's going to be some losers. I got the impression from your talk that the black-tailed godwit populations are increasing.
This particular,
expanding.
That's right. So this is an relatively unusual migratory species, as you say, because it is increasing, expanding in range, and that's one of the reasons why we got so lucky getting involved with this one when we did, because when you have a species that's doing that, you have opportunities to understand the sorts of processes that can drive changes in distribution and abundance that is really hard to do with declining species, because when they're gone, they're gone. You can't study them there anymore.
No, that's right.
So actually an expanding system is a very good model for a contracting system.
By the way, what's the reason that they're expanding?
You want to know? So the reason for the population increase in numbers, we think, is largely down to the warming that's happened. Okay. So climate warming is happening everywhere, but at the high latitudes of Iceland it's been happening particularly sharply and severely. And one of the things that happens in this system is that when it's a warm spring, they nest earlier. And we think this is because it's a species that likes to conceal its nest. They nest on the ground, right, but they try to conceal the nest in tall grass. So they like a patch where they can weave the grass over the head of the incubating bird. And in a cold spring, grass growth is slow, right, and the grass just doesn't get tall enough soon enough, and so it's dangerous for them to nest at that point. Yes. So in a warm spring, more of them can nest early. When they nest early, they have higher success, more chicks, right, and those chicks have benefits of being early. Okay. So early chicks, we think, have more opportunities to go and find good winter sites, yes, by following adults and just having more time available to them. And that, we think, is the cycle that's driving more and more birds. So they are the winners, yes, in the climate change.
And the other astounding finding of your studies have been the fact that the late leavers, the ones that nest later, and I guess the juveniles, yep, and they don't go to where the traditional places where the adults have gone.
Yeah, that's right. So the other thing we've seen as the number of birds has gone up, the range has expanded. Okay. So we have godwits expanding all the way around Iceland and breeding in areas now that they didn't 50 to 100 years ago. And in the wintering grounds, we have an expansion from traditional areas into new ones. And the new sites are more northerly in distribution. So there's been a kind of northern expansion, both in the breeding and the wintering grounds. And one of the things that our work has shown is that expansion has happened because we have birds. The expansion into the breeding grounds has meant that those birds are more likely to end up in the newly colonized winter sites, yes, probably just because they're later. Okay. They breed later, they hatch later, the chicks fledge later, there's nobody else to follow, so they're just more likely to end up in the more northerly sites. So we've got a range expansion that's driven by timing differences in Iceland.
Jen, you're so enthusiastic about this topic. Is there some things you could say to other young women out there that are thinking about being a field ornithologist?
Oh, do it. It's the best job ever.
Yeah.
What a privilege this job is, yes, right? The opportunity to spend time with these animals, and I would say that I think that, a real key to doing field ornithology well is you have to try to get into the head of the birds. Yes. What is it that's important for them? Yes. And for that, you must spend time in the field. Yes. Really thinking about all of the things that constrain them. Yeah. What are they experiencing? What are the important things here that matter to them, and what are the things that scare them or attract them? Once you start to understand that, then you can start to understand these bigger processes.
And field work can be kind of tough, eh? It's not. A lot of people think that you just go out there and get this data and it's so easy to get, but it's hard slogging.
It can be hard. It's
but it's fun.
Oh, it's a huge amount of fun, and you've got to be out there in the tough conditions as well, because that's what the birds are experiencing, right? So if they're going to do it, you're going to have to do this as well to experience it. But as I say, the extraordinary feeling of figuring out something that is important in the system, and even more importantly, when you can see how that feature can possibly be used to help those birds, that's a tremendous feeling.
Well, thank you so much, Jen. It's been a real pleasure talking to you, and I wish you very much to enjoy the rest of the Congress.
Thank you very much. It's been great fun.
Okay, thank you.
Well, isn't that fascinating? Professor Jenny Gill really gave an interesting discussion there about migration, and also with what she called the climate warmth and climate change. Absolutely inspiring. Did you hear finally how she talked about passion? And you need to be there. You need to be involved. Otherwise, you cannot understand. You have to almost become a bird in order to understand it. That is a brilliant, absolutely brilliant way of putting it. I think that really is the key and the essence of understanding is to become part of it. So really wonderful contributions. I hope you enjoyed it. So I see a quick question here. Someone just asked, Cassie Scott asked, are you related to Ben Sasse? I hope I pronounce his name correctly. I'm pronouncing it the way Germans pronounce it. It's actually of Saxon origin. The name that's my family name, Sass, which means which comes from Saxony. The other meaning of the word Sasse is actually rabbit hole. Interesting, huh? Even a lot of Germans don't know that, but that's a specific name for that. So Ben Sasse is, if I recall correctly, he's the senator of Nebraska, I think. Very involved senator in Nebraska, politician. And I do remember once sort of communicating with him sort of on the edge. Someone was saying, are you related? Or he discovered my channel or so. I haven't had any interaction, but we did somehow, I think he's aware that I exist, and I'm certainly aware that he exists because he's obviously more famous because he's a senator. Right, so that's the answer to Ben Sasse. There are like family names, of course. Sasse is not that common in Germany, but it is common enough that I think we would have to go far back in history to see whether we're actually related. I don't know. The answer, I've never done any ancestor studies because I'm so involved in my life. I don't have time for that. Okay, so let's get to the final question. So it's not going to be about the Canada goose because I think it's too simple. But there was a very interesting question, if you remember. Let me just get the names right here. Yes, if you remember, Yossi Leshem from Israel was Professor Bird, and thanks so much for Professor David Bird for jumping in to make the interviews so interesting here. I hope you enjoyed it. But his Osprey Mama was born in Nebraska, I see. Well, that's great. One syllable, interesting. Yes, Gentleman Ghost, that's what it is. And Christy says she's enjoying it so much. Great. So I've got a question here for you. Thank you, Kathy, too, and Amanda and Klingenborg and all others, Susan North and everybody who's doing that. The same with Facebook, of course. I don't have the Facebook page open at the moment, but thanks for jumping in everywhere and for your interest. So the question here is, what is the national bird of Israel? And I'm going to put something additional. It's got a crown. What color of the feathers is the crown, the main part? So that is my question for you. And I will put in the number to dial. There we go. That's the number to dial. Okay. So that's the number that you need to dial. Let me just put this one lower so I can jump in at the same time. Let's see. Oh no, that didn't work at all. I think that didn't work out. So never mind. I don't know what I've done with the number now. I have made it disappear somewhere. Oh, now I've given it away. Okay, sorry. I've given you the name. Sorry. I've answered the question I'm not supposed to do. I've shared this. Isn't that funny? So I better think of a new question. Anyway, that's the answer to the question. That happens when you have so many screens open. Okay, so there's your national bird of Israel. That's the hoopoe. Okay, so let me ask you another question just out of my head. Let's jump to South Africa. Yeah, I just mentioned it. What is the beach called where all the penguins are? Okay, so that's going to be my question for you. Yes, Dr. Bird or Professor Bird is a brilliant interview. He is. So I mentioned the beach in South Africa where all the penguins are. What is the name of that beach is my question. It's near Cape Town. It's very famous. If you've listened to me just talk about it, then you will know. Thanks for putting in the number. So the number to dial is 425-223-4960. 425-223-4960. Unfortunately, I don't know what has happened there. The dial, I don't know what has happened, but I can't at the moment get it back on the screen for some reason. Unless I blend myself out, I think I might be able to do it like this. Yeah, there it is. 425-223-4960 is the number. So let me just put up the volume here on my one. So let's make sure I can receive calls here. Okay, so that's the number, 425-223-4960. Sorry for that small technical hiccup. So do phone in. So what is the beach in South Africa called where all the penguins are? That is the question. Spontaneous question after you now know that the hoopoe bird is the national bird of Israel. And you see how beautiful it's got, this orange crown, right? That was what I meant. That was what I meant to show you anyway. Okay. So I'm going to wait now for some calls. I'm only going to take one call. I'm not going to give it too much time either. I can see that the number is actually transparent here behind me. So if I move out of the way, you can actually see the number there. Yeah, there you go. There you go. So that's maybe a way to solve it now. Hope the microphone's still loud enough. Another fantastic show. Thank you, Jackie. Well, I so enjoyed it. I really like to contribute to shows myself because it keeps my mind going, and I have to put a lot of preparation together also with my team, whom I'd like to thank. I thought like Jenny and Nichole for looking after the channel so much and helping everywhere, answer your questions hopefully on all the different broadcasting channels. I'm mostly delighted that we didn't have any technical hiccup. So here's an incoming call. So let's just take this. Let's see if this works. So just be patient. Technology here is not always perfect. Yeah, we have to try again. I'm sorry. Just call again, please. Call again. Call again. Because I don't know. Okay, let's see if this works. I hope it will work now. Hello?
Hey, it's Osprey Mama.
Osprey Mama, can you hear her? I hope that I'll try and put the microphone closer. 1 second so they can hear you. Just give me a second. Osprey Mama from beautiful Florida. Isn't that wonderful? Well, how did you like the show tonight?
Oh, I loved it. There's so much information. I'm going to have to replay it again just to go back and click on the links and learn everything again.
That's
wonderful.
That's wonderful. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Well, thanks also for your contribution and your kind donations always. And I've got your beautiful cup here from Florida. It's transparent for some reason, but you can see it. There's your beautiful cup. I'm just showing it. Drink my coffee. I love this cup. So thanks.
I saw your magical trick with it being transparent.
I don't know how I did it. Because it just happens to have green on top, so it disappears. It's funny, isn't it? Anyway. Yeah. Anyway, has it cooled down yet in?
We are finally in the 80s, and we're getting a lot of wind from all those storms, but nothing much. So we'll be in the 80s.
Oh, very nice. So that's a lot better. It's a lot better for you. Well, that's really wonderful. I was just thinking my sister from South Africa has just arrived in Miami, Florida, where she's going to go on some cruise with her husband. Her husband is a ship doctor. Can you believe it? So that's actually the most important position you can have on a cruise. Is the ship doctor is above the captain. Many don't know that, but he has absolute rights over everything because that's how important it is. So she's going on a long cruise with him there from off Miami. I just had to mention Florida, so I just remembered that. But anyway, Osprey Mama, let's get to the point. So I did mention this beautiful beach, and I did see a comment also of you. Did you before we go and answer that? You were swimming among some other seabirds, right? I just saw a comment there.
Down in Crystal River here in Florida.
Right.
Oh,
the dolphins. Oh, my goodness. You saw dolphins?
The manatees are wonderful.
Wow, I have never seen that. That's amazing. It's beautiful. That's very nice. Very nice. So now the question, do you know which famous beach it was where the penguins were in South Africa, or are, I should say?
Okay, well, I'm just guessing. Mm-hmm. So I don't, but is it Boulder?
Yes, Boulder's Beach. That's completely correct. That's the famous Boulder's Beach. Yes. Yes, and that's completely correct. Well done. That's great. Lovely beach, I can say. I don't know how it is now. I've been there many years ago. They've also got, and Cape Town is just so exquisite. I mean, Professor Peter Ryan was talking about the Western Cape, how incredible it is. So it's the whole Cape is just so incredible with wildlife and with with the whole botany there. They've got this beautiful Kirstenbosch Garden, which is a beautiful park there. Where you have the most beautiful, it's one of the most beautiful botanical gardens in the world, right off the cliff from Table Mountain and so on and so on. The nature is just so exquisite there. And one of the places is Boulder Beach. When you go to the south, to the Cape Peninsula, you get there. And you have these, I don't remember how many penguin species there were. I think about 23 or so, if I recall correctly, but somewhere around the 20s. Is that right? Do you remember that? I don't know.
An interview or videotape for us
yes
sometime.
Yes, if it
sounds wonderful.
Yes, if it is still, you know, if I may go to South Africa, I'm not sure yet in January. If I do, I will certainly do that. But I will definitely see if I can meet Peter Ryan there or some other bird experts. So I would like to do a high-speed photography there. Do some beautiful weaver birds in slow motion, things that haven't been done like that before. So that's why I want to go to South Africa. Yeah, well, thank you very much for calling in, and we'll spin the wheel quickly. Yeah, well, you know what? I'm going to spin the wheel, and you're going to say blindly stop. So let me just do this. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, so no, you cannot. You cannot. But what I'm going to do now, you shouldn't see it because that's the best way of doing it. So I'm going to spin the wheel now behind me. That's myself there. I'm going to get out of the way. Just wait 1 second. I'm just so people on the screen can actually see it now. So that's me with blue eyes actually spinning the wheel. So I'm going to start spinning now. And all you need to do is stop. So you choose your own picture here. Okay, go. Yeah, it is.
Okay, stop.
Okay, wow, you got a beautiful picture here. It's picture number 35. You can't see it. It's from Alaska. It's one of the best pictures I've ever taken. So you have actually hit an incredible picture. It was taken with Jack Moland together in Alaska. Absolutely amazing, where an eagle right in front of us was scraping scraping the sand. It's a remarkable picture because I've never taken a picture like that. So that is your winning picture. Congratulations, and thank you for being on the show. That's great.
Thank you, and I want to say hi to everybody. I'm so glad everybody was here tonight because you did a really good show tonight, and it was so interesting, and it's nice to have everybody here involved again. For a while there, we were missing some of our little group, and I'm just glad everybody's coming back together. It's wonderful having everybody here.
Well, that's so nice that you can speak now to everyone. Maybe one day I'll do it like that people can actually come in live with the camera. I could do that. It's very nice to have you all contribute, and thank you to everyone here for your enthusiasm and your passion. It's really incredible. So good night to your Osprey Mama, and thanks for all the things that you do for this channel. Thank you.
Okay. Good night, everybody. Good night, Chris.
Good night. Okay, so that was Osprey Mama. So now you heard her. Quite incredible. There in Florida, that is getting finally a lot cooler. So finally, I wanted to say thank you very much to everyone. And isn't it lovely to have this beautiful screen behind me? Of all the, of all these drawings. I will pick up many more. I wanted to thank you for making this show possible, for all your contributions and your dedication. I will probably, for the Patreon members, I will probably give, some of them said, can't I see your dogs a bit more of your house? Yes, I will do a special session for my, for those who are contributing quite a lot in Patreon. I will do that either this Sunday or next Sunday. So I'll see how the time goes, but I will definitely do that. I'll show you a bit around the house and also maybe the hummingbirds that I have outside and a little bit more of the personal side of my life, which you may find interesting, and you can ask then. Okay, so thank you very much for being with us. Now I've got quite a complicated sequence here to disengage. It's not even switching on one, so I'll try and do it with YouTube first. Let me see if I can manage this. Yes, I can. So first I'll say goodbye to all my YouTube viewers. So thank you very much. So I'll just say goodbye and thanks. Have a nice weekend.